There's something about countryside roads that feels like stepping back in time, where the world grows quiet, the air grows heavy, and even the sky seems to hold its breath. That's exactly what Thomas and Eliza Cartwright were searching for when they left the noise of the city behind. After months of grief following a devastating miscarriage, they needed silence, space, escape. Autumn had just begun to bleed its colors into the landscape. Rust-colored leaves twisted in the wind, like confetti from some long-forgotten funeral. The Cartwrights had promised each other a digital detox. No GPS, no cell phones, just a folded map and the open road. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened across the hills, they found themselves lost. Beyond a line of decaying trees, they passed a wooden sign with faded letters. Mercy Hill. 2 miles. Neither remembered seeing it on the map, but the road behind them was all farmland and fog. Suddenly, the rental car began to cough and stutter. The headlights flickered. Thomas pulled over just as the engine died completely. No lights, no signal, no movement, except the slow swirl of mist creeping in like a living thing. Then they saw it. Through the fog, down a narrow gravel path, stood a farmhouse, its shape crooked, as if the earth itself had grown tired of holding it upright. The roof sagged, the windows gaped like hollow eyes, and yet, inexplicably, smoke curled from the chimney. "That house looks abandoned," Eliza whispered, her voice trembling. "Someone must be home if there's a fire," Thomas replied, trying to steady his nerves. "Maybe they'll let us use a phone." The two stepped out, shoes crunching on wet gravel. The wind hissed through tall, dry corn stalks that flanked the path like skeletal sentries. A crooked scarecrow stood just before the front steps, its straw arms twisted in a grotesque pose, as though it had been caught mid-scream. They climbed onto the porch. Each board groaned under their weight, and the wood smelled of mildew and thyme. Thomas knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Silence. Just as they turned to leave, the front door slowly creaked open on its own, revealing a dim interior bathed in the flicker of firelight. Inside, the house was far too clean. The furniture was old-fashioned but polished. Lace curtains lined the windows. A porcelain doll sat upright in a rocking chair, facing the door like it had been expecting them. Above the fireplace, a large black-and-white photo hung. A grim family, of 5 standing in front of the same farmhouse. Their eyes were wide, unblinking. Their faces lacked expression, but something behind those faces felt wrong. "We'll just stay until morning," Thomas muttered. "We don't have another choice." As soon as they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them with a thunderous bang. They jumped, spinning around. The doorknob wouldn't budge. The lock clicked on its own. The house had swallowed them, and it was hungry. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting long, warped shadows across the room. Thomas jiggled the doorknob again, but it wouldn't budge. Eliza's breath fogged in the air. Odd, considering the flames just a few feet away. "This place is freezing," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. "Something's wrong, Thomas. It's too still." He tried to calm her. "Let's find a landline, or maybe someone's upstairs." They moved through the hallway. The wooden floorboards beneath them creaked with each cautious step, but it wasn't just their footsteps they heard. Sometimes there was a second creak, a beat behind them. The hallway was narrow and lined with family portraits. Dozens of them. Each photo showed the same family as the one above the fireplace, but in different poses. In one, the father held a dead fox, its eyes gouged out. In another, the mother stood behind a child, missing its face entirely, like it had been blurred out by some unseen force. But in every photo, their eyes followed Eliza and Thomas as they walked past. One photo, larger than the rest, hung at the end of the hall. It showed the family seated at a dining table. But in the background, almost lost in shadow, a dark figure stood behind them. Its face was a smudge of black. Its hands were resting on the shoulders of the children. It hadn't been in the earlier photos. The door to the kitchen creaked open on its own. They entered cautiously. The table was set for 5. Gleaming silverware, white plates, full glasses of red wine, or what they hoped was wine. And there was food, freshly cooked, steaming even now. No one else was there. "That's not possible," Eliza whispered. This house looked empty from the outside. Just then, tap, tap, tap. It came from the ceiling above them, like someone walking barefoot on wood. Slowly, deliberately. Eliza turned to Thomas. "Please, let's not go upstairs." But he was already moving toward the staircase. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched into darkness, with 3 closed doors. As they reached the landing, something moved behind them, quick, subtle, just out of view. Eliza spun, but there was nothing there. Then the door at the end of the hall creaked open slightly. Inside was a child's bedroom. Dust danced in the air like ash. A small twin bed stood in the corner with a threadbare teddy bear lying on the floor. "Let's check for a phone and leave," Thomas said. As he stepped inside, the closet door suddenly burst open with a crash. Nothing. Only shadows. But Eliza gasped. On the walls, written in charcoal, were the same words over and over again. "Don't let her out. Don't let her out. Don't let her out." And then they saw the mirror. A tall, antique one with a cracked frame. Their reflections looked wrong. Just slightly off. Too pale. Too still. Behind their reflections, a third figure stood. A woman in a black dress, long, wet hair hanging over her face. Eliza turned around in terror. No one was there. But in the mirror, the woman stepped closer. Her hands pressed against the glass. Tap, 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 from inside the mirror. Then her head tilted, and she smiled. Eliza screamed and backed away from the mirror, knocking over a small nightstand. The lamp on it shattered as it hit the wooden floor, plunging the room into flickering darkness. Thomas grabbed her arm and yanked her out of the room, slamming the door behind them. They stood in the hallway, breathless, the shadows, dancing like they were alive. The air grew colder with each second, as if the house itself was inhaling. Thomas fumbled with his phone. Still no signal. "Whatever that was," Eliza said. "It wasn't a reflection." Suddenly, a door behind them creaked open. The guest room. They hadn't touched it. Thomas cautiously approached. The hinges groaned louder than they should have. Inside was an old, rusted hospital bed. Straps hung from its corners. A broken wheelchair lay in the corner beside an overturned tray. Something glistened on the floor. Blood. Old and dark, like it had soaked into the boards years ago. On the wall above the bed, words were scratched into the plaster, deep and desperate. "The mirror is her gate. We sealed her in. She wants out." And then they heard it again. Tap, 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 coming from behind the bedroom walls, as though someone was walking inside them, following them. Thomas grabbed Eliza's hand. "We're leaving. Now." They rushed down the stairs, but stopped cold. The front door was wide open. Rain poured, in from outside, soaking the floor. A shape stood on the porch, not moving, not speaking, just standing. A woman, tall, with hair matted to her face by the rain. Her dress clung to her pale skin. She raised her hand, and the lights inside the house blinked out, one by one. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of heavy, wet footsteps echoed on the wooden porch. The lights flickered back on, and the porch was empty, except for wet footprints leading into the house. They backed away, heart pounding, just as a guttural whisper came from behind them. She never left. The basement door creaked open by itself. From the darkness below, something was crawling up the stairs. Slow, ragged breathing filled the air. A cold draft swept across the room, smelling of rot and earth. Thomas grabbed a fire poker from the hearth. But what came up the stairs wasn't a person. It was a pale, broken figure, arms too long, legs twisted unnaturally, face hidden beneath long black hair. The sound it made was like wet cloth dragging on wood. Eliza screamed. They slammed. The basement door shut, but the banging started instantly. She was trying to get out. Again. The basement door groaned and bulged as something slammed into it again and again. Thomas braced it with a chair, sweat pouring down his face despite the cold. Eliza backed into the hallway, her eyes wide and fixed on the dark staircase. Every bang was louder than the last. She was getting stronger. Suddenly, the house fell silent. No wind, no rain, no banging. Just the sound of Eliza's heartbeat thundering in her ears. Then, click. The chair wedged under the doorknob slowly slid. Aside. All on its own. The door creaked open. Darkness bled out of the basement like smoke. Eliza. Run, Thomas whispered. But she couldn't move. Her legs locked in place. From the bottom of the stairs, something began to rise. A hand appeared first. Bony, gray, fingers split at the knuckles. Then a second hand, crawling up the walls. The creature dragged itself into view. Her. But not human. Not anymore. Her face was stitched in places, mouth torn open wider than it should be, eyes glowing faintly under strands of wet, clinging hair. She wasn't walking. She was floating. Gliding. Closer. Thomas swung the poker. It passed through. Her. No resistance. No impact. Her face twisted into a smile, revealing a second mouth just below her chin. Eliza screamed, grabbing Thomas, pulling him into the hallway. They slammed the door to the guest room, pushing the bed against it. The creature's whisper was inside the walls now. You opened the gate. You opened the gate. And then, mirrors. Every mirror in the house lit up, on their own. Cracks spidered through their surfaces, and behind each reflection, she was there. Watching. Smiling. Thomas looked at Eliza. We have to break them. Everyone. They sprinted from room to room, smashing every mirror they could find. Each time, they shattered one. A scream echoed from the walls. The house shook. Plaster rained from the ceiling. Finally, they reached the attic. The last mirror stood at the far end, tall and ornate, its glass pulsing like a heartbeat. The creature appeared behind them, crawling upside down on the ceiling, her limbs cracking with each movement. Thomas screamed, grabbed an iron rod, and hurled it into the mirror. Crash! The mirror exploded, and so did she. The scream that followed was inhuman, violent, and endless. The house convulsed like a living thing, doors slammed, windows shattered inward, and then, silence. When Eliza and Thomas stumbled out into the rain-soaked dawn, the farmhouse behind them collapsed in on itself, swallowed by the earth as if it had never existed. They never spoke of it again. But sometimes, when the rain hits just right, when the wind howls through the trees, and the mirror catches your reflection a second too late, you wonder, did she ever truly leave? The countryside village of Darrington was the kind of place forgotten by time. Fields stretching for miles, winding dirt paths, and ancient cottages with moss-covered roofs. Only a few dozen people lived there, and most of them kept to themselves. It was surrounded on all sides by dense woods and empty farmland, except for one place no one dared to visit: Hollow Field. Locals whispered about Hollow Field like it was cursed. The grass grew too tall, the crows circled too low, and people who entered that place after dark didn't always return the same. Some claimed they saw a lantern moving through the fog there, swaying as if held by an invisible hand. Others said it wasn't a lantern at all, but a lure. Lena Moore, a 24-year-old aspiring photographer, had just moved to Darrington with dreams of capturing raw rural life. She scoffed at the old superstitions, laughing when the villagers warned her about Hollow Field. To her, it sounded like a perfect photo opportunity. Mysterious fog, old ruins, silence. Exactly the kind of mood she craved for her new project. One evening, as a heavy mist rolled over the hills, Lena grabbed her camera, wrapped herself in a raincoat, and headed toward the edge of the field. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, turning the sky to ash. Every step deeper into Hollow Field was met with eerie silence. No crickets, no wind, not even the rustle of leaves. The fog clung to her legs like it was alive. About 30 minutes in, she stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. A dim orange light flickered ahead, gently bobbing in the thick mist. Her first thought was a farmer, maybe with a lantern. But the way it swayed, it wasn't steady. It didn't move like someone walking. It drifted in slow, erratic motions, like it was watching. She raised her camera and took a shot. Click. The flash lit up the field, and for a split second, she saw a silhouette, tall, slender, head tilted, no face. Then darkness again. The lantern light vanished. Suddenly the air felt colder. Lena turned around to leave, but the path behind her was gone. No trail, no trees, just endless white fog. Then she heard it. Crunch. A slow, deliberate footstep, right behind her. Lena didn't dare turn around. Her breath fogged the air as she stood frozen in place, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. The damp cold bit through her clothes, but she barely noticed. The sound, that single, unmistakable crunch, echoed in her ears, followed by silence so thick it hummed. She tightened her grip on the camera and slowly began to back away, each step careful and quiet. Her boots squelched against the muddy ground. The fog thickened as if reacting to her fear, curling around her arms and legs like tendrils. Then, another crunch. Closer. She spun around, raising the camera like a shield, clicking the shutter. Wildly, flash. For a blink of a second, she caught something in the burst of light. A figure, unnaturally tall, limbs too long, face obscured by shadows, its head tilted at an impossible angle. It looked more like a marionette than a human being. She ran. Branches clawed at her face from the fog, roots tangled beneath her feet. Her breath was ragged, vision blurred by tears and panic. Every direction looked the same. No trees, no fences, just white. And behind her, she could hear it now. Not just footsteps, but a low creaking sound, like ancient wood straining beneath weight. A memory surfaced, something an old woman in the village had muttered when Lena first arrived. That light ain't meant to guide, it's meant to bring you in. She stumbled into a clearing, heart racing, eyes scanning the mist. That's when she saw it again, the lantern, floating 10 feet above the ground, still, waiting. This time it was closer, no more, than 30 feet away, and beneath it, that figure again, emerging slowly, its joints cracking with every movement, its face still hidden, but its hands, long, thin, blackened like they'd been in the ground. Lena screamed and bolted the opposite way, slipping in the mud, cutting, her palm on something sharp. Her flashlight, hanging from her bag, flickered erratically as she sprinted. She didn't know how long she ran. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. Finally, through the fog, she saw something, an old wooden fence, the edge of the field. She pushed herself over it, landing hard on the other side. The fog behind her stopped abruptly, as if held back by an invisible wall. She lay there, panting in the wet grass. Safe, or so she thought. Then her camera, still, dangling around her neck, clicked on. The screen flashed a preview of her last photo. She stared at it, heart sinking. In the image, behind her, barely visible, was the figure, closer than she remembered, its hand reaching for her shoulder. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat in her car, doors locked, headlights pointed toward the fence she had vaulted just hours ago. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the fog clung to the earth like a hungry spirit. Her body trembled, not just from the cold, but from the image burned into her mind. The photo. The figure reaching for her. She had deleted the picture, but somehow, it was still there. Each time she turned the camera off and back on, it reappeared. Slightly different. Closer. By morning, the fog had only grown thicker. And stranger still, her phone refused to find signal. The GPS showed only a blank screen. It was as if Hollow Field had vanished from the world map entirely. Trying not to panic, Lena decided to drive back to the town to find help. But no matter which direction she took, the road twisted and curved, eventually leading her back to the same sagging sign. Welcome to Hollow Field. The town didn't exist anymore. Just overgrown ruins, shells of homes overtaken by vines and moss, rusted swing sets in yards no one had walked through in decades. And all the while, she felt eyes watching her. cold, hungry. She stumbled into what was once a library. Inside, the smell of rot was overpowering, but a single desk stood untouched beneath a broken skylight. On it, an old leather-bound journal. She flipped it open with shaking fingers. The lantern calls to those who are broken, alone, or searching. Do not follow it. Do not speak to it. And never, ever, let it see you run. Her blood ran, cold. As she turned the next page, something fell out, a photo, faded, brittle, but clear enough. It was a girl standing in the same field. Lena's breath caught in her throat. It was her. She dropped the photo and stumbled back. From the cracked window, she saw it again. The lantern. Floating just beyond the library's edge, and beneath it, the figure. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Because now Lena understood. It didn't hunt like an animal. It waited. Patient. Eternal. She bolted from the library, sprinting down alleys, past collapsing houses, hoping she could lose it. But the lantern was always there. Always ahead. As if the world bent to its will. Suddenly, the fog parted, revealing a well. Old. Covered in vines. And behind it, a shape. A human figure, but not the one she feared. It was Jason. Soaking wet, pale, eyes wide with terror. "Lena," he croaked, "you have to wake up. They won't let me go, please. You have to wake up." Her knees buckled. "Jason, how? What do you mean, wake up?" He looked over her shoulder, face contorting in horror. "They're coming." Then he vanished. No sound. No flash. Just gone, and behind her, that creaking sound again. Only this time, it was multiple. More than one figure. The lantern pulsed brighter. The fog whispered her name. Lena ran. She didn't know which way she was going, only that she had to get away from the sound, the low, grinding creak of ancient wood and the crunch of damp earth beneath invisible footsteps. The lantern's glow blinked through the trees, like a heartbeat, impossibly fast, impossibly close. The fog had become something else now. It moved. It slithered low, curled high, and hissed in her ears like breath against skin. Lena could feel it, whispers, thousands of them, coiling through, her hair brushing her neck. Jason's last words echoed in her skull. "You have to wake up." But she wasn't asleep. Was she? Branches clawed at her arms, slicing her skin. The cold felt like knives. She reached an open field, breath ragged. In the middle stood the house from the photo, ancient, rotted, leaning like it was waiting to collapse. And yet, something inside it pulled her in. Against every instinct screaming for her to run, Lena stepped onto the porch. The boards groaned like they remembered her name. Inside was darkness, but not empty darkness, watching. Darkness. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. One message, from Jason. "Don't open the door upstairs." She looked up. A staircase wound like a spine into the gloom above. At the top, a single door, slightly ajar. Light spilled from it, flickering, yellow-orange. The lantern's light. But now, it wasn't outside. It was in the house. Lena's body moved, before her mind could stop it. Step by step, she climbed. Each stair groaned louder than the last. Her breath fogged in the air, even though the house wasn't cold anymore. It was hungry. The door opened wider on its own. Inside was a nursery, toys covered in dust, a broken crib, and the lantern, floating mid-air, casting long shadows that didn't match the shapes of the furniture. Lena backed away slowly, then saw the mirror. Her reflection didn't move. She turned and ran, but the hallway had changed. It wasn't wood anymore. It was dirt, damp and cold, like a tunnel carved underground. The whispers were louder now. And then, she saw them. Figures, dozens of them. People who had followed the lantern, eyes gone, faces twisted in agony. They reached for her, mouths moving in silent screams. Jason was among them. He mouthed one last word. Run. She sprinted, no longer thinking, no longer feeling. The house collapsed around her, flames erupting from the walls, the lantern blazing like a sun. And then, silence. Lena woke in her car, rain tapping gently on the windshield. The sun was rising, the fog gone. Was it a dream? She reached into her coat pocket for her phone. The screen was cracked, black. Except for one image burned into the screen. The lantern, still glowing, still watching. And beneath it, a message slowly appeared in jagged pixelated letters. You saw it. Now it sees you.